All right. We've got everything going now. Okay. Well, welcome everyone back to the White Sand Self-Care Community. I am your host, Laura Cross, and your resource for self-care. And I am so excited to have with me today, Andrea Perry. She's an experienced K through 12 classroom teacher that's now empowering teachers to thrive in their careers and their lives. Andrea, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Me too. I was like, it's such a, I think it's a topic that doesn't even, we don't even really discuss much, but, so tell me, we're going to start with self-care. So what is your definition of self-care?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, it's one of those things that we just hear a lot, but society tells us is one thing, and it's really completely opposite. So society tells us, right, that it's these things like massages, nails, facials, shopping, coffee, bubble baths, all those things, which are really self-indulgence. It's pampering. And those might have a spot within self-care, but they are not self-care itself. And so I think of it like, we maybe don't eat well for a whole day. We don't eat much. We're busy. We're going and going. And then when it's time and we're like, I'm crashing, you get grab a candy bar. And that's what society tells us self-care is, like treat yourself, indulgence, and then you just feel horrible afterwards because it doesn't actually do what it says it's going to do. So for me, true self-care is practicing consistent habits that sustain your physical health, your mental health, emotional, and your spiritual well-being as well. So the keyword I think there is consistent.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second keyword would be just that sustains all four parts of well-being. So if you're using the previous metaphor, it would be like, eating your balanced meals each day and creating that habit so that you're truly taking care of yourself and you're not creating this life that you need to escape from all the time.
Right. And I would totally agree. I always tell people it's more than bubble baths. And I mean, yes, that stuff is great. And we do need it. We need to get away from the rat race and separate, but
Yeah.
it's also about, doing things that bring you joy and enjoyment. You have to do something to refill yourself, but as you said, the correct way and not, sticking those nasty little comfort foods or whatever in where we're
Yeah.
where it's like, oh, my quick fix, but then you crash. So
Yeah.
why yeah. So why are so many teachers turned off by the term self-care?
You know, I think that it's a lot of the systems are not set up to support teachers to take care of themselves. Teachers are overworked, they're overwhelmed, they're consistently having more things added to their plates. Not always with a lot of things either. So that's definitely part of it. But the other part of it is teachers are inherently selfless. It's why they got into the profession to begin with.
Hmm.
And so it's really difficult to do something for oneself when you're so busy taking care of other people. And it causes a lot of guilt. It's hard for teachers to hear, well, you need to practice more self-care because it feels like they're not doing enough already. They're stretched too thin. It's one more thing that they need to do, they're told they need to do. And when we think of self-care in the traditional form of just the pampering self-indulgences, teachers can't afford those things either. So it just seems like this thing that they hear they need to do, they might even want to do, but don't feel set up to do. And it just feels like one more area in their life that they're not succeeding.
Yeah. And that makes total sense. It's just like your caregivers or people that are always caring for others,
Yes.
and the thing is though, you can't keep doing that and not take care of yourself because if you're burnt out,
Mm-hmm.
how are you going to help take care of anybody? You start to
Hey,
get stressed, your fuse gets short. Guess what? That goes on to all those people that you're trying to take care of. So,
yes. The blessing is the opposite is true. When you're filled, that flows
mhm.
out of everyone else. And yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So why is self-care then you think so difficult for teachers to in particular to practice?
Yeah. So just no other profession asks as much of teachers, especially in their personal lives and asking them to give so much outside of what they already give. And again, it goes back to, that we're inherently selfless. It's what draws us to the profession. So it feels selfish to take care of ourselves, to take time to say no to extra obligations to students, to families. And so that's really difficult. And like you said, we can't do well and give in our jobs and our personal lives when we're so drained ourselves. And so taking the idea of self-care and making sure that teachers understand that self-care and taking care of themselves actually is a gift that they give to others is a huge turning point for them and for most. And I know it was for me, like recognizing that I am better for my students and I'm better for my family when I do set those boundaries, say no to things, take care of myself. That's when the self-care felt less selfish. But it's a hard thing to get over for a lot of us.
Oh, I'm sure. Was there like one particular thing that kind of happened that made you realize that it was important when you were
I think
teaching?
it was kind of like that slow, subtle buildup that you don't recognize at first until all of a sudden you're like, I'm not a happy person. Whether it's not a happy person, for your students, short temper, less patience, more cynical with your job, losing your joy, those types of things, or giving your all there and then coming home to family and just more snippety, whatever it might be. For me, I found it very much, I was single at the time. I found that it was with my students, I was becoming more cynical. It was easier to get caught up in that feeling and just to have a shorter fuse with students, and they didn't deserve it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. So how do you help your clients overcome burnout and practice self-care?
Yeah. So this is such a big passion of mine. Because I get it. Like I said, I've been there. I've been through burnout, being a teacher, and now as a life health and wellness coach, being able to marry those two things together to support clients is just a huge area of passion for me. And we start by talking through the root causes because there can be many root causes. We might have burnout from physical things, from, if someone suffers from depression and anxiety, they're more prone to be burned out. But it could also be just like, poor physical habits. It could be a lot of different things. It could be something emotional. It could be a drain on our spiritual self, whatever it is, we have to identify that root cause for each individual. And then from there, we move through this process a signature process I created that leads them from those root causes to creating a practical plan for caring for those particular areas to help overcome that burnout. And then we move forward into, okay, well, how do we make this sustainable and actually create some self-care and work-life balance? So we dig into our ideal values, because oftentimes we burn out because we're not living life in alignment with our values, like what we truly actually value when it comes down to it. And so we talk through core values and we create a life that's in alignment with those. There's also a lot of talk about setting healthy boundaries.
Yeah.
I think that's true of anyone with self-care, right? We have to set those healthy boundaries for ourselves. And that can be really difficult, like I said, especially for teachers being so selfless. So we do a lot of work around overcoming guilt related to self-care. There's a lot of I don't deserve this, or I feel bad if, or my students are going to suffer if, or my family is going to suffer if. So we work around a lot of those mental blocks that stand in our way of caring for ourselves and overcoming burnout. And I do this either one-on-one or in group settings to help my clients overcome burnout and practice self-care so they can sustain their life and their career.
Yeah. The boundaries I think is huge too. And like you said, it's difficult to set, especially if those boundaries have to do with family members or other things, or especially when you're so driven to do something, but it's draining you. It's like, no, gotta set limits. I
Yes.
can't do this.
Yeah, for me, something that really changed was understanding that saying no to one thing was actually saying yes to something else. So if you say no to that extra sponsorship, that extra coaching position at the school that you feel like, well, no one else will do it, I have to do it, and you
Mhm.
say no to that, you're saying yes to family time maybe, or you're saying yes to your physical health, or whatever it might be, and changing our mindset to I am saying yes to something else is huge, I think, for learning how to set healthy boundaries without guilt.
Yeah. And besides boundaries, I know a lot of us have issues with self-talk, the way we talk to ourselves. So what role does self-talk play in burnout and and navigate and negotiating the self-care for you?
Yeah. Oh man, it's huge. It's just our human condition, right? To have this inner voice in our head, and it so often is negative, telling us the worst things about ourselves. And this is where that guilt comes, especially for teachers. I can't be a good teacher if I spend less time with my students. I can't be a good parent if I'm spending too much time with my students. So, there's those things that we tell ourselves and we hold true for ourselves that we need to break through. There's that, again, like I mentioned, the selfishness versus service. I can't take care of myself and still be of full good service, which is a belief, meaning it's not a fact. It's not true.
Right.
Um,
You
and
tell yourself it enough, you might think it's a fact, but it's really
oh
not.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it feels so real. And so that's why I focus so much on helping teachers overcome that, because been there, it's tough. And then also perfectionism. That's a big thing that I've struggled with. And it's that inner voice saying that you have to do everything well all the time. You can't let anything slide ever. You have to give 100% to your students, but you also have to give 100% to your family. Well, no one can give 200% all the time, and there's 0% left for yourself. So that negative self-talk that leads to perfectionism also leads to burnout very quickly. And we just leave ourselves last. And so I really work to help my clients listen to that inner voice and recognize when it's not serving them well, when it is negative, and to challenge those negative thoughts by replacing them with more accurate and uplifting thoughts. And we do this in a variety of ways, but I think it's just a game changer, not just for teachers, but just
Oh, for anyone. Because I tell you, perfectionism is exhausting. That's why I tell people I am perfectly imperfect and I am good with that. I had
Yes.
to embrace that. I was like, you know what? It's overrated being a perfectionist.
Oh man, it's exhausting.
And it's
It's
exhausting.
exhausting.
Yeah. Yep. Do you have an example of one of those that you would do? I like changing this negative to a positive that you want to share?
Oh yeah, definitely. So one of the keys just to rewiring our brain on a neurological level is, we can actually change our brain chemistry by our thoughts. So if you're constantly thinking something negative, it's like a muscle. You're exercising that muscle in your brain. So it's not enough to just stop thinking it, but you want to work the other muscle better. And so you replace it with two positive or more a thought that serves you better. So for teachers, this might be something like, I hate that stack of papers on my desk. I don't want to grade them. Grading them is the worst thing ever. I can't even do it. I don't want to do it. And so oftentimes we'll leave it, ignore it. Procrastination, that spirals us into depression as well, and to burnout. But replacing that thought, instead of how much we loathe it, and if they're actually essential papers to grade, we can say things like, I want a clean desk when I leave today. And, I enjoy that. Or like, maybe a different thought that you could replace it with is, I'm looking forward to the time I'm spending with my family at home tonight by tackling these now. It could be a variety of things. If they're not essential to grade, it could be like, it is fine to, not be perfectionist and say, these are good ones to give a quick glance through and do an informal assessment with my students. And that's a boundary I can say no to, so there's a variety of ways to do that. But the key there is replacing that one negative thought with at least two positive thoughts. And this isn't like toxic positivity. We need to acknowledge that there are things that are uncomfortable and don't feel good, but making sure that we're not hurting ourselves by being our worst enemy in our inner voice, and that we're supporting ourselves well into that more positive mindset. Yeah.
Absolutely. I appreciate you sharing all of that. What is the best way for people to get a hold of you if they'd like to work with you or learn more about ways that they can practice better self-care?
It's a great question. So you can contact me via my website. It's www.thrivewithandreaperry.com. And I'd love for you guys to visit there. And there's some free resources in a resource tab to kind of get you started. And there's a contact form. I'd love to hear from you guys. So it's a great place to contact me and learn a little bit more about how I can support you, someone you know, a loved one.
Yeah, because even if you're not one, I'm sure you know someone who is, because we do have lots of teachers and even if they don't recognize the signs, you might, you would probably recognize them in it.
Yeah, and
But
even just be able to sponsor, them to do some just to support them in that way, to give them that gift of a little extra support during this time when we have this crisis of a teacher shortage and burnout is at an all-time high. It's just such a beautiful time to see their need and fulfill it in a really good way that actually it's more than a mug. It's more than a Starbucks gift.
yeah, or an
It's
apple.
like really, really helps.
Yeah, yeah, yep, definitely, definitely. Well, I'll make sure we put your contact information in the comments, but I do want to thank you for taking the time and getting to know everybody in the group and sharing that with everyone. So
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
you too. And I love what you're doing. I think it's wonderful. And like you said, you have the experience. You've been doing this for years. So, you know what it's like. And that's a great thing. So
Thank you so much. Such a pleasure to talk with you and excited to talk with more as well.
absolutely. Yeah. If anyone knows teachers or you are a teacher and you're experiencing some of those things that Andrea was talking about, definitely reach out to her. Check out her website. We'll put that in the comments for you. But I want to wish everybody a happy weekend. Have a wonderful weekend. Time off. Hopefully, you're doing something for time off and enjoy yourselves. I know for us, we'll be watching NASCAR. It's Daytona 500 weekend, so we'll be watching the races. But we'll see you all next week.
Have a great week, everyone.